In January 2025, I was traveling from North Conway, New Hampshire to Portland, Maine, along the route of the long dormant Maine Central Mountain Division, and decided to document its current conditions. The line was last used for through freight in 1983, but an occasional local freight ran this section of track until around 1986. The line, now owned by the Maine Department of Transportation, doesn't see trains west of Westbrook, but most of the line is clear of brush, and lightweight equipment like speeders and high rails have operated over it recently. There's even sections of rail with trail built alongside in Freiburg and Gorham. The condition of the main portion of the rail line is in great contrast to the New Hampshire side, where much of the line is operated by the Conway Scenic Railroad. Their section from North Conway to Hazens went quiet in 1984, but they took over the track a decade later, restored it, and started running trains. The route, which literally runs on the side of mountains and over large bridges, leads to destination Crawford Notch, an important turnaround point for their Mountaineer train, once called the Notch train. This line was completely rebuilt by Conway in the 1990s, which allowed them to expand their excursions and reconnect the line to the National Rail Network at Hazens. Currently, CSRR boasts operating 53 miles of rail line, and that just goes to show Conway was up for the challenge of reopening long stretches of dormant railroad. It is also extremely important to note the reopened rail line boosted local economic development. I personally don't think I'd ever travel all the way up there to spend my money if that line wasn't the draw it is today. While Conway Scenic's operating rights end at Hazens, the New Hampshire Central takes over the mountain division there and maintains operating rights all the way to Gilman, Vermont, where the railroad once served an important mill. The track there hasn't been used in about 25 years, but that will soon change. The Vermont rail system purchased the New Hampshire Central in 2024 and recently released a plan to reopen the mountain all the way to St. Johnsbury, Vermont, eventually. First, they want to focus on getting transload customers in Whitefield, New Hampshire, then rebuild to Gilman, Vermont. The former mill site at Gilman is being developed as an industrial park, and the railroad aims to make the site more attractive with rail access for future development. Once there, they would work out a deal with current track owner CSX, who inherited the line when purchasing Pan Am Railways, to take over the line from Gilman to St. Johnsbury. This deal, once finalized, would put the entire mountain division from St. Johnsbury, Vermont to North Conway, New Hampshire, back in service. The only remaining section of unused track would be from the Saco River Bridge near the New Hampshire state line to Westbrook, Maine. It should be noted Westbrook, Maine to Portland, Maine is used by CSX for freight, and Amtrak's current station in Portland is near the beginning of the line. This station may eventually be moved to make Amtrak's Downeaster route more direct as trains continue north as far as Brunswick on a different track. But this begs the question, what's next for the Mountain Division in Maine? It hasn't been used in 4 decades, even though Maine's Department of Transportation purchased it to retain it for future potential rail use. They even went to the extent to build some rail with trail sections to retain the rail infrastructure. Now Maine is looking to remove the rest of the track instead of continuing the rail with trail build. This plan would pull up the rails from Standish to Freiburg, which is the town bordering New Hampshire. This would remove 31 miles of track that has some limited freight potential, but could also be a route from Portland to Conway to shuttle tourist passengers. Now, it would cost millions of dollars to make that happen, but it would also cost a similar amount to remove the rails and build a bike path. Rail with trail would be even more expensive, which seems to be the reason Maine is looking to get rid of the tracks. On the bright side is that the trail idea is that it is for interim use. Interim use is when a track is removed for a trail until a railroad comes back to use the line, though it is so much harder to then reactivate the line without railroad tracks in place, which then kills most reactivation plans. Some plans that would be viable as long as the track was there in some form can't even get off the ground because the tracks just no longer exist. This makes businesses look elsewhere to set up shop, and then the formerly rail-served towns are solely reliant on trucks and the tourist money that the trails may or may not bring in. It should also be noted that once the trails are built, they need to be maintained. There have been multiple instances where I visit a trail and it isn't plowed or cleared properly. This view in Freiburg during my January 2025 visit illustrates this issue well. Meanwhile, train-serving businesses, supporting jobs, and moving people run year-round and through the snow. There's no reason we can't have both rail stay in place with the trails. Now I'm going on and on about my pro-rail opinion and optimism on this, but some may be asking the questions. Are there customers? What's the passenger and tourist potential? And who would even be interested in operating these tracks? Well, there's actually answers for all of these. A study Maine conducted showed some limited freight potential years ago. This could include moving steel and aggregates. I also personally believe that there's a market for moving fuel, building products, and animal feed. Poland Springs also seems to be doing business around Freiburg, evidently telling by their trailer crossing the mountain division in this shot. There was even interest in them building a bottling plant nearby that could have been served by rail. I'm not sure if these plans are still on the table, though. This alone shows that there's some freight potential, but it may or may not be enough for Maine DOT to cough up the money to rebuild the line. As for passenger and tourist, it is a hard say. I'm not sure an Amtrak service like the Downeaster would work, but perhaps a Cape Flyer style train bringing passengers to and from Conway and Portland would work. For those who don't know, the Cape Flyer is an MBTA train running from Boston to Cape Cod on summer weekends. It is quite popular and skips the traffic associated with the Cape, giving riders a more relaxing trip detached from their automobiles. As for tourist trains, it is possible that there would be trains running to North Conway or even from points between Freiburg and Portland. The Freiburg Fair is also a fantastic opportunity for tourist trains, either shuttling passengers to the town or even having excursions from Freiburg itself during the fair. Unfortunately, the tracks don't border the fair directly, but it wouldn't be impossible to have a bus shuttle from the train to the event. There's also potential for a cruise train. The Conway Scenic runs a cruise train from North Conway and through Crawford Notch, but seeing as the tracks are inland, a bus has to shuttle passengers from the ship docked at Portland, Maine. Could there be a ski train to Attitash, maybe even a train of Fabians, with a bus shuttle to head to Mount Washington? Now, who would operate the line is the big question that already has an answer, that being the Conway Scenic. This isn't just hope that the Conway Scenic would operate it, but it comes straight from Conway themselves. In 2023, they submitted this to the state of Maine in hopes of preserving the line from Portland. The Conway Scenic Railroad, if offered a 99-year lease with payments based on percentage of revenue from the Mountain Division, will help Maine DOT to develop and implement a realistic plan to reopen and revitalize the Mountain Division from Portland to the New Hampshire border for tourist train and freight operations. The Conway Scenic Railroad will operate all trains with no state subsidies. This is pretty big in my opinion, but about 2 years later, there doesn't seem to be much development, at least not what the public can see or has access to. With Conway's proposal up in the air, who knows if Maine will proceed with the trail. Given that their own definition of interim use says the trail would only be in place until a railroad looks to reopen the line, and now that they have an interested operator looking to use the tracks, the whole trail plan might be derailed. I guess time will tell whether they are still bullheaded for a trail only, or if they'll look to work with Conway to make the line active again. Now, what can we do? My suggestion would be to check out and join the Maine Rail Group. They are an independent, all-volunteer group that promotes awareness of railroads' contributions to Maine's economy and their important role in moving passengers and freight. MRG is supportive of keeping the Mountain Division intact for future potential use. I have linked their website in the video description, so check that out to learn how to get involved. Stay tuned for more information on the Mountain Division, hopefully some future updates on the Maine Rail Group's efforts.